Hello and welcome back to Challenge Accepted. Over the course of the podcast that we've done, we've already explored clarity, originality, insights, individuality, consistency. All of those are without doubt vital for engagement, but none work really unless your audience feels understood. And today we're talking about empathy, the trait that turns that message from functional to meaningful. And over the course of these episodes, if you've been keeping up with us, we've been privileged to have some amazing guests, and that continues absolutely today. Today's guests understand empathy in a way very few marketeers do. I'm going to try and make him blush now. Tony is a senior director of marketing for Tanium across EMEA, a role where trust, clarity, and understanding in a high-pressure customer really matter. He's also, if that isn't busy enough, a community first responder with South Central Ambulance Service. Tony, welcome and thank you very much for sharing your time.
Cheers, Lucy. Great to, I'm honoured and humbled to be in this sort of panel with you, having followed some sort of great luminaries before. So yeah, excited for the conversation.
Bless you, thank you. And Ginny, a big one for you today, going to keep us grounded in behavioural science. Empathy's a big topic, right? You ready for today?
Got my giant mug of tea. I'm ready to...
So let's set the scene properly. If you look up what empathy means in a dictionary, it's going to tell you that it's the ability to understand and share feelings and thoughts and perspective of another person's feelings, walking in their shoes, if you like. What we're going to try and do today is to bring that into a marketing environment and why empathy is important within a marketing and content environment. Content communications have changed significantly. I think we can all agree over the last few years. McKinsey's report, The Attention Equation, it's quite an interesting report, describes three modern consumers. There's content lovers, interactivity enthusiasts, and community trendsetters. They all behave differently, but they share one expectation, is that they want brands to understand how they feel, not just what they're clicking on. Tony, Ginny, are you a content lover? Are you a stalker of content? How do you interact with content these days?
I'll go on, Jen. You go first. You're the expert.
How do I interact with content these days? I think I'm an anomaly because I'm not a fan of video. And video seems to be all the rage right now. But I'm often too busy to listen and I prefer to skim read.
Prefer to listen to a podcast?
I love listening to a podcast because you can do that when you're walking to the post office. Or you're getting out and you're in nature. And all of these things are what makes us human over sitting in front of a screen, really reading that very long PDF filled with words that somebody wants you to give your email address for.
Tony, how do you...
I just love that Ginny now is giving this impression that she lives in a quaint little English village that still has a post box, a post office, and, you know, the local pub. But I'll admit to being... A little bit to being a TikToker. I love a bit of doom scrolling, avid LinkedIn, but just finding the right people on LinkedIn to follow that are posting their own stuff versus someone else's or like an AI version of what they think I want to see. But yeah, big scroller, needs to be more present, I think is what my wife calls it. So
avoid the AI slop as much as possible, but getting harder and harder, isn't it, I suppose? So there's a bunch of stats, and yes, I will give you a few stats to get us going. But for me, empathy, and I think for all of us, isn't about the numbers, it's about the people, and that is the point. But for those of you who do enjoy a number, IPA Nielsen's customer neuroscience says that messages that evoke emotional has a resonance of up to 70% higher recall than a neutral message. Harvard Business Review will say that content that signals empathy or shared identity increases trust by up to 40%, and we know trust builds engagement, so that's a good one for all of us, I think. So there are numbers out there to tell us that empathy is becoming a competitive advantage. I think possibly it might have been seen as a bit soft or a bit voodoo science kind of behind the scenes things, but it's coming more and more. So let's think about it when it matters in high stakes communication and Tony's roles, dual roles. Tony, in your world of enterprise security and IT operations where people work under extreme pressure and carry massive responsibility, where have you seen empathy make a difference?
So I've been in the IT industry for many years, but many more than I'd care to admit. It's an industry actually built, when you build software, software is built with vulnerability. Unfortunately, vulnerabilities can be exploited, whether it's an outage or a ransomware attack or breaches. So the people doing that role, whether they're in operations or IT security, are living in that heightened pressure of not just the job they're trying to do, but actually trying to solve for problems that they've just inherited. So, I think what you find is the empathy matters because the stakes are high. If something goes wrong in marketing, hopefully somebody notices, but do people really care? When something goes wrong to somebody's IT infrastructure, not only does their organization recognize it, their customers recognize it, the board recognizes it, and typically the stock market would recognize it as well. So the sort of the consequence is a lot greater. So when you're dealing with people that are being attacked, that are in fear of their role, their reputation, you sort of have to approach communication with them in a different lens, really.
Yeah,
and just be cognizant of that.
There's been some pretty high-profile cases, haven't there, where cybersecurity has failed or had various failure points that I think have brought that to that urgency, that high risk to the fore. Ginny, why is someone's emotional state important to understand? We're talking about pressure and responsibility, and how does that manifest itself with the human we're trying to talk to?
I mean, it's everything, really. We forget when we're selling to, especially in B2B, that you're selling to people and to humans. And we even forget it a little bit in professional situations. When you're talking to people, you're professional and you have this veneer on. And the difference is that you might get somebody, they might be starting to engage with your content and something has gone on in their life, or they're trying to fix a problem because they've just had an outage. So their bodies are in a state of fight or flight. And that's the sort of thing that you've got to think about and remember when you're creating content and you're trying to get them engaged and you're trying to tell them we can actually help. Like, we're not just telling you, please listen, we can help. So having that human understanding of humanity is what's going to cut through when people are in that fight or flight mode or whatever situation and emotions they're feeling at that moment in time.
Oh,
That's good, actually. There's also an element where you've got your persona at work, and then you've got all the other challenges and issues of what goes on in your personal life. And you, as somebody's communicating to them, you just don't know. So I don't know how, I think what you've referenced there, it's about the person, about their situation. And it's so complicated because you're right, B2B typically is quite boring or perceived to be boring, but it's actually the human behind that makes it a bit more interesting. Not just their work life, but also their personal life and the personal pressures that they're facing. Yeah,
exactly. So, I mean, obviously everyone is different and you can't account for 50,000 emotions at once when you're writing any piece of content. That's just not sustainable. The world's too heterogeneous for that. But you can do things like show that you understand their role as a employee in this industry. So just by putting that human thing at the top of your content, we know you've got a problem. This is your problem. We understand it. We've got you. And because your brains react initially to emotion before they even think, you've already won the first battle by reducing that emotional load and being that we understand. Your brain thinks they get me, and it makes it that little bit safer and easier to proceed with listening to you. So I'm not saying, you need to create a piece of content for every single emotional persona out there. It's not quite that difficult. Maybe with AI you can. Who knows?
Yeah, churn it out at scale. Nonsense to everybody then, rather than just nonsense to a few. Tony, in your first responder role, meeting people again in moments of vulnerability, how do you demonstrate empathy? How does that come across in that role?
Yeah, so those who don't know, a community first responder is a volunteer that responds to category 1 and 2 emergencies in their local community ahead of an ambulance. So at this stage, somebody's called 999. They feel like they're in medical distress of some kind, normally very critical, from like a cardiac arrest to breathing difficulties or a catastrophic bleed. So when you arrive at the incident, normally it's in their house. Normally it's in the tightest room in the house. They're normally sat on the toilet or fallen by the bath or down the side of the bed. It's really difficult. there's a huge amount of stress because the environment is stressful. The family, the friends are at a heightened level of stress because they're concerned about the person on the floor. So the two things that help straight away, one is you're wearing green, so you look like you know what you're doing. And the other is just try and slow everything down and calm everything down. Most medical emergencies, whilst they're time pressured, the worst thing actually is the side effect of stress and anxiety. And by coming in and just being a very calm presence in that environment just slows everybody down and slows everything down. And so I always say 90% of what we do is around just being present and communicating and asking questions, just asking open questions to understand what's happened to get to where we are now. Some of it you can see if the person's lying on the floor and they're unconscious and not breathing, there's not a lot they can tell you. You just got to get on and start doing CPR. But in most incidents, there's a story related to how this happened, why they got there, and then you just follow the algorithm. But I think it's being present, asking questions, involving the environment. So it's not just about the patient, it's about the spouse, it's about the family members, and just engaging everybody in that conversation so they all feel like they're being heard and listened to and understood, and that you're taking immediate action to try and help alleviate the issues that they're facing. Some of that you can do medically, some of it is actually by just ensuring you get care providers to arrive faster than they would have done if you hadn't been there first. So yeah, it's an interesting sort of mix from like the day job to the responding job, because unfortunately I don't get to wear green at work. It's normally just navy blue. But yeah, there's a lot of science around the color. There's a lot of science around just being present. And actually that instant response, we respond within 3 to 5 to 8 minutes of an incident, whereas an ambulance could be taking 18 minutes to 30. So that element of every minute counts just helps to alleviate that anxiety and just really give that sort of calm, collective presence, really.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I've never really thought about the correlation between your day job and your volunteering work, but there's so many synergies if listening to those two stories back to back. You've almost got the decision-making unit of the family that's sitting around. You've got the person that you're trying to communicate with, but then you've got all of the other people around that you need to be cognizant of and be aware of their fears, their needs as well. But your focus is to make communication and connect with the one person that needs the help the most. What got you into ambulance volunteering?
Do you want the truth, or do you want to know the truth? It was during COVID. Prior to this and prior to COVID, I was like the rugby dad. So I do the first aid at rugby just to be involved and be able to have beers with the coaches. And then during COVID, when we were all on lockdown, I just wanted to find something to help the community, but also be able to get out of the house, because we'd been in prison 23 hours a day. And this opportunity came up and did the training and started responding. And during COVID, it was literally just like, I felt like the milkman delivering oxygen to people's houses for people that were suffocating inside their own bodies. But it gives you a real buzz, that ability to walk into any environment and you don't know really in many cases what you're walking into, being able to sort of see, understand, and then treat and have a material impact on someone else's life is pretty rewarding. It gives you a really good sort of cortisol hit. It gets the heart racing, and then it's job to job. I actually responded last night. I treated 4 patients in my local community, everybody from sort of a heart attack. I had a stroke. I had a man who'd fallen in the morning, just called in saying he didn't feel very well. But so I arrived 12 hours later, but actually was suffering from postural hypertension. So when he stood up, his blood pressure dropped, and that's why he would fall. So yeah, of course he felt really bad. So yeah, again, just, it's that element of me just meeting totally different people, totally different personas, and just being in their lives for a small amount of time and having a sort of some value to them. Yeah, it just makes you feel good. No different to my day job. Like, people love when marketing come into a meeting, or we run an event, or we pay for the beers. No,
not necessarily in that order.
No. But it's a truly rewarding thing to do. And it's remarkable how many people from so many different diverse backgrounds do it. I manage now a team of 16 in my local region. And I've got everybody from a dinner lady to a school teacher to somebody who works for the Met Police. So just a variety of different backgrounds and different professions and different ages, from 20 through to 70. So it's just, it's a different class of people that just give up their time to sort of get away from the wife, really. That's how I would describe it. That was the reality.
We'll edit that
So
bit
just
down.
yeah.
When you're at work and then when you're volunteering, do you take your learnings from each into the other sphere? And how do you manage your marketing team with empathy?
So, so I think the key thing is when you're going into something that's where it's life-threatening, it's instant, and you can actually see by asking questions and following an algorithm, you can see what's going on. I would say at work, most issues that arise have arisen because of something else that's happening, and people are actually worried normally about something that's happened in the past, and will that happen again in the future? Well, the standard law of economics and actually standard law of responding to, I can't change what's happened already. So you can just understand what's happened and learn from it, and then understand where you're trying to go and what you're trying to achieve, and then building a plan to get there. So always look, we've ended up where we've ended up. We can go and we can pick that apart for hours on end, but it's not going to serve anything. As long as we know where we've ended up, we can sort of change the outcome if we just look to what are we trying to achieve by when, and who do we need to pull in to help achieve that. So yeah, I'd say a little bit more relaxed in the sense of not worrying about the now, because now is just where you've ended up or what's happened in the past, but just being able to reflect and change, or how can you affect the difference in the future, and trying to be positive about the opportunity rather than negative about the past. Sometimes you do have to have awkward conversations if it happens again and again, because you don't want to repeat poor behavior. But yeah, 99% of the time, it's about looking forward, not looking back, and coming together, and that sort of joint sense of togetherness to try and achieve something, rather than just, Ginny, like, what have you done? Where have you ended up? Or why have you done this? Versus, what we want to try and achieve together.
I think that's an underestimated and undervalued aspect of marketing is if a team feels psychologically safe, if they've got all of the motivators, I think I've mentioned before, relatedness, competence, and I always forget the last one, autonomy. If they feel like they can come and they can make mistakes, and they've got a boss and they're in a team that will support them through it, and they treat each other with empathy, then that will come out in the end products. It's scientific. When you feel safer, you're more creative, your brain is less narrow, you're more likely to think, you're less likely to make mistakes, and then that will come out in better marketing. And that's something that you don't get from AI. AI is always in the same psychological state because it's not human. And I think as businesses and as marketing teams, we really ought to think about that more when we want to level up the game and the productivity and the output of our marketing teams.
Yeah, at the end of the day, in all that we do, hopefully nobody's going to die.
Right.
So if you put it in that context, you do care about the individual, because I do care about how you feel when you go home, Ginny. I want to alleviate that stress, because ultimately we're just executing marketing campaigns, or we're just executing a marketing program. And okay, we may have wasted a bit of money doing it, but we will have learned something that means we hopefully don't do that again. So you can contextualize it and say, look, let's park that away and let's go and work on what we want to do going forward. I think we can probably all describe bosses we've had in the past where the problems become your problem, and actually they become super angry, and that creates that huge level of anxiety where you can't sleep and you can't eat. Well, I don't struggle with eating, but you worry about it, and the worry then overtakes what you're trying to achieve, because you fear failure and you fear being in that environment again. Nobody wants to work in that environment. That's not healthy. So,
not at all.
No, absolutely. No. I'm a firm believer that if you spend more time of your life at work than you do anywhere else, if you don't enjoy it and the people you work with, don't do it. And I realise that's a little naive, simplistic maybe, but it's such an important, it's such an big part of your life. You've got to find a way to enjoy it, whatever it is. But I mean, the team you're building and what you do at Tanium is absolutely amazing. I know I've spoken to a lot of your team over the time, that they really enjoy the environment that you create, and that I think gets more out of them. So that empathy, as you just said to Ginny, you care about how she feels when she goes home. It's not just the job, and I think that's very evident in the team around you, Tony. So I think that's nice to see in action.
Ginny, like last time we spoke, we spoke about empathy, and sometimes that can be seen as soft. Like, and you're the expert in this area. I think, how do you see that relating to sort of leadership and goal outcome versus the sort of the opposite of that, which is lacking empathy and that sort of harshness or the abrasive side of somebody's personality?
I think it's interesting because I think soft skills, especially with the onset of AI, but even before that, even a while ago, soft skills were becoming more important in the workplace. And when you look at studies of performance of businesses from a behavioral change management perspective, those that had leaders that exhibited strong soft skills performed better. And it's that psychological safety. If you're fearing blame and career damage, and you're close to burnout, because burnout isn't necessarily you're working too hard, it's that unmanaged mental load that your brain has got from being in that fight or flight, then like I said, you're going into threat mode, you're going to make more errors. And whereas if you're treated with empathy, there's in fact the opposite, is the reduction of that social threat. So there's so much where, especially in marketing, where you have got to convey and communicate externally. And I think we might come on to this a bit later with how we inherently as humans can feel, we have a gut feeling, and you can read a piece of content and know it's AI because there's something not quite right about it. And as marketers, or as any customer facing person in a business, you can tell when you go into that company, you go into a meeting, you look at the website, you get on calls with people, you can tell that people are happy or they're not. And I'm firmly of the belief that a happy team, no matter what the product is going to be more successful, and the business will be more successful otherwise.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. And might be a good point now to get into, whilst you're on a roll, Ginny, of actually what behavioural science is. We've touched on it across the entire series, obviously, but empathy, I think, is where it becomes most visible. Can you explain what behavioural science actually is, and why we think it's no longer optional, really, in marketing? So over to you, Ginny. What is behavioural science?
Well, everything. Well, okay. So behavioural science exists because people don't behave in the way we assume they do. So it kind of stems from economics, and economics assumes everyone is rational. They're not rational. Everyone has different preferences for risk, for time, for everything. So humans behave irrationally and not logically. We're emotional, we're distracted. Everything depends on context, like we've touched on already. And marketing tends to ignore that side of things. So from my perspective, and behavioral science is so much more than that, but from a empathy, it sits right at the heart of behavioral science because it's emotion-led, and it explains how people decide what to notice, decide who to trust, decide what to remember, decide which company they're going to talk to because that company actually helped them years ago, and the brain will default to the emotion. The emotion will build the memory. So it's about understanding how real humans experience content in real situations. And right now, when content is prolific and it's everywhere, I think understanding that human behavior element is going to be what differentiates you. I kind of went off on a bit of a tangent beyond what behavioral science was there.
No, that's good. That's good. So why do we need to be utilising it? How does behavioural science or empathy translate into competitive advantage?
There's a question. So using behavioural science to create a competitive advantage isn't a one and done. It's not taking one lever or one tool or being like, hey, I built that blog with empathy, I'm done. It's consistently doing it over time, so it compounds. So as I alluded to just now, you're building that trust with a business. You treat them with empathy, and your memory and your brain will remember it more, because when empathy is seen or emotions are seen as novel, they're seen as more relevant than the mundane. So therefore, your brain, when you're asleep and it's processing all of your memories from the day, it will prioritize the ones that had emotions attached to it and empathy attached, and be like, and flag it and be like, you've got to remember this. So over time, as a business, if you're treating your audience with empathy, if you're understanding them, you're lowering that threat level, your brain will remember it, and that will compound and compound and compound over time. So it's the building of trust through consistency, through being creative and doing novel things. That means that when it comes to the time when people actually want to buy, and we talk about buyer journeys, and it is not when they give you their email address, it's from years before, then your brain is just going to take the shortcut and default to, hey, Tanium really helped me with that guide when I was really stressed about something. I'm just going to put them on the shortlist. And that is your competitive advantage. People are humans, you're treating them like humans, and they'll respond like humans. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Does empathy matter more in B2B or B2C? Just out of...
It matters in both. And I often think that because B2C is, business to human, consumer, we will automatically default to that answer. But actually in B2B, you're still selling to people. We all know that. And the stakes are higher. Like Tony mentioned, especially in, when you're doing cybersecurity or financial crime, and it's critical infrastructure within a business that literally impacts on people's well-being. And still in B2B, you've got to consider that there's those high stakes attached, and people are more likely to be in the higher emotional threat levels.
I think, Ginny, you hit on a really good point, because we're bombarded by so many messages. And when you look at, say, decision makers, and people always say, like, well, who are your competitors? Your competitors typically aren't the people that are selling the same thing you're selling. The competitors are the 10,000 other companies that are trying to sell to the same persona. It's I think, Lucy, you mentioned a little stat on a previous podcast. It was like the consuming 17 newspapers worth of information a day.
174 newspapers worth of content a day we're bombarded with.
I'm sure if I tell that story, going to be 200 by the time we finish this podcast. And then people would be telling the story down the pub. It'd be 300 pages, 300 newspapers. Yeah. So how do you break through? And I think it is that element of, we talk in our team about the science of memories and what elicits that memory, and how do you remember that thing in a week, a month, a year? Because you invite somebody to a conference and you talk at them for 8 hours. What are they taking away from that, apart from the lunch wasn't great, or the travel in was a bit shit? And I'm not sure we can say shit on your podcast, but maybe we can edit that out. Oh, cool. Okay.
Right. International Sign Language for bullshit. It comes out every episode. We got it in. Right.
There you go. Or it's what's that takeaway, and how do people remember that in the future? And I think the more you can relate to them, and the more that you try and weave a storyline in that they'll remember. It's why Netflix is so successful, and why EastEnders is still running after 45 years. It's because they always end on a cliffhanger. Well, where's your cliffhanger? Where's your takeaway? Where's your doof 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 doof? We missed that. For anybody in America, EastEnders is a really awful TV program. It's a bit like television cocaine. I'm not sure there's a single for that, but
that's called the peak end effect. What you talking about, like. There's another bit of an event, and I can't remember off the top of my brain, but if you have a really good ending, people will forgive you the shit lunch. So that's peak end effect. So if you're doing events, there you go, there's a tip. That's why we have closing keynotes.
Yeah.
Have closing keynotes and then something really novel at the very end, so people's attention is grasped again.
Why fireworks happen at the end of an event, right?
Or Scott Taylor with the puppets. Instantly memorable. Why would you wouldn't forget that, would you? So
exactly.
Tony, do you think organizations these days genuinely believe they're being empathetic? Are people more aware of understanding the human in the loop, or is it still a bit instinctive, a bit on the side, a bit misunderstood?
I think they want to. I think the challenge actually is, and we touched on it a few times, in the world of AI, everything becomes a little bit, a bit samey. I remember I had a pitch from a marketing agency once, and they pitched that like everybody in our industry looked like wallpaper. The downside was they then presented their creative and it also looked like wallpaper. I was like, oh, you had a great idea and then you didn't execute on it. So I think people aspire to, but they don't. But there are some really good examples, again, from our industry of things which have gone wrong, where organizations have shown real leadership in using empathy and leaning in. You know, we talk about the M&S breach, an iconic British brand attacked. It wasn't their fault, but probably things within their system had gone wrong, but they were a victim of a crime. And it was amazing how they came out really quickly to explain what had happened, how it happened, what the impact was, and what they were doing to fix it, almost within a day. And their CEO really communicated with heart and really with their consumers in mind, and actually did put systems back online for 6 months. I remember my wife, I think she was saving up her M&S orders for so she could just flood the system. It was like a denied service attack when they came back online. But I think they won the hearts and minds of their consumers by just being really open and honest in that breach. And there's some really good examples of people just saying sorry. And I think that all too often organizations get caught up with like legal approvals of legal checking the text to make sure you're not making promises you shouldn't or saying things you can't. And I think in that stage, you've lost the essence of what you're trying to achieve. And I think any time that something's gone through too many review cycles or too many sort of other teams like checking it for clarity, you've lost the impact of what you're trying to achieve, and you might as well just stop because it's not going to land. It's just noise, and nobody's tuning into it.
Yeah, the committee, the horse designed by a committee, and you end up with the camel, and then no one's happy, right?
No.
Sorry, Ginny.
Oh no, you're good. Go for it.
And as I say, you touched on AI. There. Shall we skip across to let's talk about AI and the content churn that we get from that. We can't ignore it. It is absolutely everywhere now. You've mentioned it a couple of times now, Tony. In a world where AI can generate almost anything, everything, does human empathy become even more important in the work that we're doing? Sorry, go.
Oh, no, go on.
I was going to say, I think AI to me is the antithesis of behavioural science. I think they're part of the same coin. I think AI brings a lot of scale and speed and research level that we've never seen before. It's a very exciting time, I think, to have to be around marketing at the moment. But I think you need that behavioural science side of things to keep the human, to keep the empathy, to remember that you are still talking to a human being at the end of it all. Yeah. So to me, AI is incredible. I love it. But there is a danger at the moment, I think, of people, as we've talked about, that AI churn, the AI slop. It's done. It's good enough. Good is good enough. And we are in danger of losing sight of it actually engaging. Engagement is everything, folks, because we are relying too much on AI and it can't do it yet.
I'd say everybody listening to this probably has their LinkedIn full of people saying, "Hi, Ginny, I see you're the marketing director at FeedsEye, and Ginny, you're a behavioural scientist." It's like, brilliant. Like, well done, AI, for going to look at my LinkedIn profile and creating the most generic of entries, which instantly turned me off. And I think that's the bit you lose, is you lose that human interaction. Like this conversation, you know, we'd had planned for what we were going to talk about, and then we just gone off completely different tangents, which is brilliant. And that makes this a bit more interesting than whether 3 AI robots having a conversation about empathy. And so I think it's a great co-pilot. It's great for doing research. It's great for understanding and bringing together different data sets to help you sort of decide maybe who you want to target or how you want to target. But ultimately, if you lose the human element, you lose that ability of almost getting a response. Like, you don't deserve a response because you've not invested any time in that person you're trying to interact with. In the same way you wouldn't send an AI to a conference to go and engage with your audience. No. You'd find people that have subject matter expertise, that have a right to have that conversation with your intended target or buyer. And again, when there's so much noise, what can you do to set yourself apart? And actually, I think sometimes, you know, I'm the worst at writing emails with spelling errors or grammatical errors.
Typing errors,
that actually makes it a bit more real. and actually normally evokes a response because people like to correct your grammar, which brilliant. Any response is a good response to what I tell my team, especially when you're writing in other languages.
I miss M dashes. I'm a fan of a dash, but you cannot use it now because people say, "Oh, that was AI written." I like dashes. I'm judgment for M dash, I say, but yeah, people do like to correct things out there, I think. And I was going to give you another stat. That's dull of me.
Go on.
I will. Since yes, you asked, there is an increase in the amount of content that's being produced year on year, 25 to 40% more content year on year. Yep. That has to, in some shape or form, come down to the fact that AI is now out there. But customer attention hasn't changed. That's flat. So this is back to the 174 newspapers, but we don't, we are much more selective about what we read or consume or don't watch videos or however we are consuming that content now. Ginny, what's your take on AI and content?
Well, I was just going to say all of that content is probably just bland churn. And because it doesn't invoke any form of emotion, people don't notice it and read it. AI is really fascinating, and it's really interesting how it's interlinking with behavioural science right now and how they're using it and finding out that AI models can be politically persuasive and looking into the social sycophancy about how it just confirmation bias after confirmation bias is.
Yeah.
So I just worry about something like that that's going to be creating content. But I think it's that gut feeling that we know we're reading AI. We know it. And that uncanny valley and that slight ick, I'm starting to get the ick a bit when I use ChatGPT and it's like, you're the most amazing person on the planet. And so now when I see it on LinkedIn, I see it's AI. It's too much.
But I do wait for my team to say that sort of thing, though. When I say something to them, I'm waiting for you're acting like a strategist now. And they don't do it. It's disappointing.
I'm talking about more interacting with the bots, but it's also the content that they create out. But we as humans are better at knowing when to speed up, when to slow down, when to be flexible, how to manage our limited resources. And we have this knowledge that AI doesn't. If you tell AI what's the definition of success, it's progression. It's not getting more money or being happier. And that comes out in the content. And I just think we're going to get sick of it after a while. It's going to make us feel uncomfortable and threatened.
Yeah. Actually, you're seeing all this proliferation now of AI responses to LinkedIn posts. It's written by an AI and then responded by an AI, and you're voyeuring this, and it just, why am I wasting my time? And you're right. Actually, it's all too positive in that sense of, Lucy, this is the best podcast in the world. You're like, no, actually, it probably wasn't. But like challenge with a question, like that's a great thing about being humans is you can sort of look at something and actually have an opposing view and then have a conversation and a debate. And AI might get to that level, but it doesn't, as you said about the confirmation bias, it doesn't really. It sort of likes to sort of move things along. It's like a production line. There are some great uses, like in use of creative, taking a static image and making it into a video, or taking a static image and make it into a birthday present. Like those things, I think, I look at that, I think, wow, like that's really impressive. And that would have taken an agency months or years. But then you still know it's an AI. And sometimes you do just want that you almost have that sort of thirst for sort of just give me something that's not as perfect and maybe took a bit longer and has some rough edges and is a bit more real. I think that's what people have a thirst for going forward, is a bit more reality. But as a co-pilot, amazing. I have a whole separate system in my office, which is basically my AI center, where you just use it for doing data crunching and reporting and all those things. Amazing, but yeah, for everything else, it's maybe it's an age thing as well, generational thing, where you just remember the days where the computer was actually new in your desk, not something that was just living your day life. So
I'm actually interested from what you were saying about how you're using AI there, Tony. Lucy, you sit between clients, teams, partners, and Tony and I both are just in one company each. What do you see about how companies are using AI differently as an agency?
I think it's an amazing, very creative time to be in marketing if you're using these tools in the right way with the right guardrails. I think that's really important. I think from an agency perspective, it wouldn't surprise me if the way we're going is pricing models change as well. There'll be almost an 80-20 rule. Do you want 80% of the work to be done by AI, and our experts will be the human or the expert in the loop for 20%, or do you want the expert to start it and the AI support it? And I think there will be a real shift in mentality. I think the whole use of GPTs, it's been a bit of a dirty word, isn't it? Is that you still get people saying, "Oh, I chat GPT'd that." Great. Why wouldn't you? The tool's there. It's and the next marketing revolution. I think it's great. Guardrails, though, I would say.
Stacked my question there for you, Luce. I had lots of questions for you, and I was like, we're running out of time. I've got to get it in there.
We can edit that. We can edit
turn the tables on me right at the end there. Thanks for that. But yeah.
But Ginny, actually, I wasn't even sure what I was going to say then.
It was going to be something insightful, I'm sure.
I was going to flip it back on Ginny, but I couldn't work out how to do it.
Let's make her get practical then. Let's think about what people can do to bring behavioural science or empathy to their day-to-day. Let's be useful podcasters. Is that a word? Podcasters? And give people something to think about when they go away. The biscuit question comes after this. But Ginny, what can people do to bring behavioural science empathy into what they're doing day-to-day?
So I actually was thinking about this morning, and checklists is my answer.
Ooh, I love a checklist.
Yeah. And I can't remember the exact stats, and I'm probably really ruining this case study, but there was an example of airline pilots who were making basic errors. And so they created a very basic checklist of like, turn on the engine, put on your seatbelt style things. And X percentage of errors by pilots dropped considerably just through having tick boxes. And I think we as marketers should do that for a number of behavioral science reasons behind it that I won't go into. But just having a checklist, even if it's laminated with a pen, even better. And within that checklist, it should have a framework for how content should be written. And we should have in there, have you considered the pain point? I mean, we've been talking about this as marketers for years, and we still seem to be too product-led. But putting that in there, have you led with empathy, and then what empathy looks like would be my biggest one. Create checklists and include in there empathy.
Nice. Tony, any advice?
Yeah, actually, Ginny's hit on a really good one there, and I'd expand the checklist. I love the lamination as well. Every marketer loves it. Lamination and colored pens. It's just have the messaging matrix. Like the thing you've written, does it relate back to the proposition you've got? So it all dovetails together. I always say to my team, whenever you've written something, imagine you're the person that's receiving it, and how would they respond? What's the reaction they're going to take? We always, all too often, we write the content as though and we review it from our own first person lens. We look at it from our own eyes, from what are we trying to push versus what's the problem you're trying to solve for on the other end. And I think all the time you're just trying to push a product is you're never going to land. You've got to try and understand the person you're communicating to. So the best way of doing that is to put yourself in their shoes, or even have a friendly that you can test it out with and actually send it to someone to go and peer review it for you. So before you send something out en masse, find a friendly to review it and actually just give you some real honest feedback. Like proper old school, like, they'll actually, maybe they can mark it up with a color pen as well, but like give you some good feedback, and then take that feedback on board, because again, you go back to the old days of like consumer marketing. You do a lot of focus groups, and you listen to the focus group, and you think, yeah, they don't know what they're talking about, but you paid for them to give you their opinions, and then you decide to ignore it. So yeah, ask for feedback, take it on board, put yourself in the shoes of the person you're trying to communicate with, and see how they'll react, and what reaction do you want to evoke. To the point of your company, Luce, challenger marketing is common, and challenging someone to change their perception on something, I think, is a really good thing. So how would you do it though, Luce? See, as you actually run a company that has challenge in the title.
Literally has challenge in the title.
It does.
I think my advice would be to dovetail on the back of you, if I may, Tony, is look at your ICPs, is start with the people you're trying to talk to. If your ICPs at the moment do not have a behavioural science layer, consider adding something. So, we know Maureen is her age, her sector, but what pressure is she under? What's she afraid of getting wrong? What's she trying to prove? That would be my advice, is start there, because everything should start with Maureen. We use Maureen a lot here as one of our ICP people.
Maureen's better than Karen or Keith.
Yeah. Like, people aren't, I have a dog. Like, that isn't what motivates them. Well, might motivate me, but it is the threats and the feelings that they're under that is going to move the wheel. So I think, our personas and our ICPs and all of that need to evolve.
Yeah. So the big one then, this is what people stick around for.
Is it?
If empathy were a biscuit, what biscuit would it be? I'm going to ask Tony first.
So I'm going to take the custard cream. It is the mainstay biscuit of the ambulance service. You go to any ambulance station, they are full of custard creams and normally a chocolate bourbon as well.
Oh, nice.
But it's a safe biscuit. It's a safe biscuit, and it gives you that sort of warm comfort. It's not flashy. It's not trying too hard. It's quietly dependable, and it's an easy dunker as well. So
it can be fairly unforgiving in a hot cup. No,
Ginny, did I steal your biscuit?
Oh,
no,
honestly,
my biscuit.
You hadn't, but I was like, that is exactly the sort of biscuit my brain wanted to pick up on, but it could only think about what it wasn't. So I love that, and I completely agree. Great.
You're going to go. I thought you were going to go for a more flashy biscuit.
No, that is everything that I think you would want in empathy as a biscuit. Steady, dependable. It feels like a hug. And yeah, I agree. But it's not a macaron, because they look nice, but they crumble over pressure. They're overpriced and they can be really disappointing as a result. So I'm going to go for a custard cream or a bourbon biscuit over a macaron.
There you go.
See, I was going to say, it's very dull now. I was going to say custard cream because it reminds me of my grandma, and she was always very empathetic. So that would be me. But maybe a malted milk then, because that reminds me of childhood but that's not you've got to be careful with the dunk on a malted milk. That's a tricky one. So that's us, folks. Thank you both very much for being here. Thank you for bringing sort of thoughtful perspectives, Tony. It's fascinating to hear about your dual life at Tanium and at what I found.
Oh yeah, very nice. The gas bug.
Yeah, this is from Tony's CPR-a-thon that we haven't managed to get into. I will wrap up now. So thank you both very much for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed the experience of Challenge Accepted. If you've watched this far, thank you very much for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe. Catch up on the episodes that you've missed. There's more good stuff to come. And until then, remember, engagement is everything. Thanks all.